cannot control the marketplace and the values that your portfolio have. You cannot control the value of a piece of real estate. You cannot control the value of crypto. And we're not saying that don't do those things, but dive into what this is, because this is the foundation. You want to do this first. You want to make sure your money is working for you before it leaves your pockets forever.
Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacy.
Hey, welcome in. We are so glad you decided to lean in with us today for another session with the Rancher Way show. And we are back for another Becoming Your Own Banker book study session. And this time we are going to be going on to page 29, where we talk about the human condition that we must all overcome in our thinking, which is Willie Sutton's law, right?
Yeah.
And so,
does anybody know who Willie Sutton was?
Yeah. If we could hear people talking through.
I know, right? So Willie Sutton was a notorious bank robber in the USA. So I find that, 1901 to 1980 is when he was alive. And when he was asked why he continued to rob banks, his reply was, that's where they keep the money.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it never ceases to amaze me that whether it was back in the early 1900s to now, I think it doesn't matter what age of time. It is just like one of those unfortunate things that we have to deal with. I think that the majority of people are honestly great human beings. But from time to time, what ends up happening is that there's a certain nature about being human for some of us, that there's a tendency to not want to earn money, but to take the money. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter where it is in the world. We just happen to be in Canada. Nelson talks about it on pages 29 and 30 of the Becoming Your Own Banker book, the 5th edition, where in order for us to be able to keep more money in our pocket, it really has nothing yes, he talks about the benefits of warehousing our money in the dividend-paying whole life insurance contract, and that it's a time-tested vehicle that's over 2 centuries old in US and almost here in Canada. So it's not like it just appeared out of nowhere. It's been around for a long time. And so has the idea of taking money from others. And he poses the question, who is the biggest thief in the world? He just said it outright. Well, if he answered it, it's here in Canada, it would be CRA.
Yeah, the Internal Revenue Service Nelson felt strongly that the Internal Revenue Service was the biggest thief. He just states, Sutton's law is formulated wherever wealth is accumulated, someone will try to steal it. And who's going to be first?
Right.
It's going to CRA.
Again, just reading Nelson's words here, government is a parasite and lives off the productive taxpayers, the host. So this one is interesting. Like even Lacy and I were pondering, okay, how do we want to go about hosting this conversation of this particular human condition? And we do have to do our best to stay on par with the message of how when you understand what the human condition is, there's a way to solve it, and how you can use the infinite banking concept to allow your life to become more prosperous in its thinking. So that's the overall objective here. Okay, so it's not to bash CRA or bash the bank. However, no one can necessarily refute that the control that is happening in our lives, where the government steps in and where the bank steps in, it's over time, like depending on where you at, it doesn't matter what you believe. The proof is there in many people's stories, and the proof is also in the terms and conditions of the contract when you take a look at it. And there is not necessarily any contract with CRA, but I mean, hey, let's face it, the income tax was charged previously, for the use and the efforts of being in war. And that was the purpose of collecting money from everybody to help in the efforts of winning the war. Well, I mean, we're always, I guess, constantly in a different war, but I mean, they just kept on doing it without permission.
Yeah. And so, he goes on to say, when taxation becomes an onerous point to where the government officials sense rebellion, they always resort to exceptions to the rule. They're always coming up with a solution. And when we've talked about that in previous episodes, when there was a campaign going around for the government to give us more money when we go through cancer treatment, specifically, it was talking about that. And it's like, they always have a solution. Is it going to be the best solution? In my opinion, someone who's gone, a cancer survivor and walked through treatment, that wasn't going to be, it was all going to be a generic solution, not tailored to each person's needs. So when we were talking about Sutton's Law and infinite banking, yes, they always create exceptions to the rule. And so it goes on to explain how they created qualified pension plans. So in the book, it refers to the 401k in the US, IRAs. And so here in Canada, we would be speaking of the RSPs. And so I love what he says next is, what a classic case of appointing the fox to guard the hen house.
Yeah, and we don't, unless you're really thinking about it and thinking about your situation, about how each financial instrument that you participate in, sometimes you may not think about that, because the only thing that is talked about when you're visiting an advisor of some kind who's advocating, or even an accountant, which in most cases that even becomes harder, right? Because the noise inside your brain says, okay, it must be safe to put our money and participate in this financial instrument, that ultimately, you're allowing someone to come in and steal from you, right? If you're not really thinking about what you're actually participating in, then you are leaving yourself susceptible to the risk of letting in someone who's going to take from you. And so Nelson really advocates in these 2 pages, what specifically can you do to understand how you can prevent this for yourself. So the real solution is to quit the government spending for all the programs and get out of the lives of the citizens. But at every turn, you see financial planners and writers that label themselves as various kinds of financial experts who, without exception, recommend that you should participate to the very fullest extent in tax-sheltered programs. It is self-evident that these programs would disappear if there was no willing participants. So stop participating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I had met with a client a couple of months ago, started her journey, and she has funded her RSPs significantly. And in a matter of 5 months, she had lost over $40,000. $40,000 of her hard-earned money. And so that stings.
So this is where it kind of opens up Pandora's box. Again, it's there is a better way than what has traditionally been advocated for in our financial world. And unfortunately, everyone here in Canada, we, including ourselves, to you, it may just seem like a bit of noise, but you have to reach deep down inside your own human experience and that of the stories of those around you to understand that what we are sharing in our very biased opinion is going to get you closer to feeling like you have a lot more financial control over your circumstances, right? But the more that you participate, who are you participating in when you put your money in certain places? If you're putting your money in an RSP, if all you're seeing is, oh, okay, well, I get a tax break this year, so I have to pay less tax this year. But behind all of it, the accountant and the person, maybe perhaps at the bank, whoever you're dealing with as it relates to your registered retirement savings plan, is basically saying to you, oh, okay, well, as long as you participate in this plan and over a period of time, if you are the older you get, it's assuming that you will have less money, less income. So assuming that you are going to strategically focus on making sure you have zero consumer debt by the time you retire. zero debt, and because you won't need to make more income because you won't have as much debt to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time you come and you pull out your RSPs, you're going to get taxed less because you don't have as much income now. So that is the hope in this. Do you know how many things have to line up in your life over a course of years in order for that to take place? And you know what? As I get older, why in the world would I want to limit myself to making less money when I know I get interested in more things and I want to do more things?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I've never been, let's just face it, I don't like being told what to do. I've always been that way. And I darn sure don't want the government telling me how much money I can or cannot make, or how old I have to be to stop earning income. I don't want that. And so we're here to tell you there's a better way. Like, their program is not the best way, and it's not the only way.
For sure, as it relates to retirement planning. Okay. There's a lot that you don't like. Okay. Which leads me into like a whole other financial philosophy. Like, this leads into something very relevant in this very moment, because this isn't about like theft of money. Okay. But we have to discern here where we're very different with, as it relates to like a financial strategy. Okay. In our Canadian marketplace and even in the US marketplace, there are financial advisors who coach you to buy term and invest the difference. This is where you will find there is a sort of like a difference in thinking. And those financial advisors don't quite often like us because we advocate for something very different. And you know what? It doesn't make a difference to me if you want to walk down the road and buy term and invest your way all the way to retirement. Well, hey, if you love hoping, praying, and wishing that you're going to have the money that you like when you need it in your latter stages, go for it. Just go for it. Because maybe you just have a riskier personality. But Lacy and I, we're just a little bit more conservative. And we also like to sleep better at night, knowing that if we're here standing before you, coaching you to utilize this strategy, we want to know that we're not going to help you lose money, right? You can, if you want to invest in the marketplace as 100% the way that you want to go about getting into your retirement, well, okay, but just know that you don't have any control over the value of things. And especially if you're not an educated investor and you're leaving it up to a portfolio manager, right? It's very different if you are actively involved in investing. If you're the kind of person who is looking at it every day or 3 times a week and you're like in it, you know, you're very focused, you know what you're doing. Hey, that's different. But there's not a lot of there's not many people like that. There's more people who abdicate responsibility, leave it up to a portfolio manager to say like, oh, you sound like you know what you're doing. I just want to get the concept, and just no. This is where it's drastically different between the practice of the infinite banking strategy versus investing your way to retirement.
Yeah. And we can come back to it's about liquidity, control, and guarantee. And those are the 3: liquidity, control, and guarantee. If you want those 3 things, this is probably worth looking at.
Well, yeah, because we're also talking about what are you doing in between time? This is not like putting money and letting it sit there. So you have you can't access your money all the way to retirement. This is also where we're very different from invest term, buy term and invest the difference. It's like you're using the strategy actively all the way up into retirement as a way to keep more money in your pocket and more strategically along the way, and allow, there is some naturally built-in guaranteed items to allow you to, where there's compound growth. And it's like that by contract, where it's most of all the other items, financial instruments are designed to trap your money, make you keep it there so that you can earn the growth. So there's no liquidity.
Yeah. Right? And it goes back to okay, if you're okay with putting your money into an RSP and you don't have access to it, and then when you do get access to it, they're going to tell you how much you can access, then you should really have no problem putting it into a policy where it's going to work for you. and you're also going to have that liquidity.
Mm-hmm. For when you need it.
Yeah. And there's going to be no questions asked about, well, what do you need it for? Or how much you can access. Goes back to do you like being told what to do? I mean, I don't. And I especially don't want to be told what to do in my latter years and with how I want to live my life financially. If I've done everything to prepare for those lower income years or when I'm less active in earning income, I don't want them telling me what I can and can't do.
And let's just break it down even on a day-to-day level. I think every decision that we make financially between now and the time that we decide that we're going to actively stop working, like exchanging our time for money, it's going to add up to a particular result. A result of, am I going to have enough money to just allow myself to not have to work or not? And so the infinite banking process is something that you actively use on a day-to-day level to actually protect ourselves from the kind of insidious thinking of setting aside money and growing that money so that you can live off interest income off those investments. I'm sorry. So and of course, people who believe in buy term and invest the difference are going to say the exact opposite, and they'll think we're the monsters. But hey, look, I believe that our thinking is very sound because we are dealing with the day-to-day living of our money. What is actual financial freedom? It depends on what you define it. But to me, and everyone else that I have talked to intimately on what actually matters is knowing that you have money when you need it.
Knowing that you can take, you know what if that section of land beside you comes up for sale? Do you want to have the opportunity, like the option to pursue that? If you're talking about, we have 3 kids. What if one of them wants to come back to the ranch? So here's my first question. Okay, well, where are we going to put them? If we're still actively on the ranch, then where are they going to live? And if a piece of land comes up for sale near us, then maybe, I'm not saying that that's not at all our scenario at this moment, but put yourself in that scenario. Do you want to be able to take advantage of that opportunity? Maybe there's a herd dispersal. Maybe the neighbors have a really nice herd and they're dispersing their herd and you want to add to yours. Do you want to have the opportunity to buy into that herd? Or maybe there's a piece of land that is really fertile.
Yeah, get yourself into a position where you're actively ready to take on an opportunity, but also actively ready to take on the valleys that we talked about in life that happen. And they all happen, right?
We all have valleys.
Yeah. And so we do want to get ourselves into that position where we have definitely a lot more control in our lives. And I just feel like you cannot control the marketplace and the values that your portfolio have. You cannot control the value of a piece of real estate. You cannot control the value of crypto. There's so many things you can't. And we're not saying that don't do those things, but dive into what this is because this is the foundation. You want to do this first. You want to make sure your money is working for you before it leaves your pockets forever. Mm-hmm. And just in order to keep more of the money, we have to understand how our money might be at risk, right? So if interest and taxes and the government are grabbing for our money, we must find a way to actually operate outside of that system that takes our money. Again, it's like real estate is all about location, location, location. Well, our money is the same thing, but it's like, how can we get the most amount of control when it comes to our money?
Yeah.
Especially on a day-to-day.
For sure on a day-to-day. And then he ends, I'm not sure where you were just reading from, but he ends this section by talking about economic problems are best solved by people freely contracting with one another and with government limited to the function of enforcing those contracts. The best way to do so is through the magnificent, and he called it magnificent, idea of dividend-paying whole life insurance. It's been around for over 200 years. It stood the test of time. It's not compulsory. It is not a government-sponsored idea. It preceded the income tax idea by a long time. It is private property. And the only people who care about others that are dear to them participate in the idea. That's a strong point.
It is a very strong point. And to that, when you understand how it works and you understand the value, it's not too expensive. Okay. When you actually really understand how the dividend-paying whole life insurance contract works, you will come to understand it's one of the best asset classes you can get into. And you can do it in such a way where it actually, like, what works for you. Like, I mean, when I first started, my first dividend-paying whole life insurance contract was $120 a month. That's what I could do. I mean, it's vastly different today, but it's still, that's where I started. You can start and meet where people at. Like there are some clients in my earlier days, they could do $50 a month to start. Okay. When you understand how it works and the role that it can play in your life, the initial thought process is of people kind of objective, like making an objection towards doing this in the first place. Because especially those people who say, oh, no, I'd rather buy term and invest the difference because dividend-paying whole life insurance contracts are too expensive, right? Well, the people advocating to buy term and invest the difference, the advisors that are doing it, they say, like, I had someone that I talked to over the course this weekend. They were in the business for 16 years with Primerica. Oh, shoot, I said it out loud, but hey, they're out there and that is the truth. Challenged me in saying, like, I've been in the business for 16 years and it's just too expensive. And I just plainly said, well, you just simply don't understand what this is or how it works. But I've been in the industry for 16 years, so I know a lot. Well, good for you. Then I guess you've arrived.
Yep.
I guess you know it all.
Which is, we're going to talk about arrived in another episode. But so, and that goes, so this week I met with someone. They have a farm and they wanted to just explore this because it sounds really awesome and it sounds like it could work for us. But I'm afraid it's going to be too expensive. So we looked at numbers. And at the end of the meeting, her response was, actually, that wasn't as expensive. Like that, I can't remember her exact words. She's like, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. This is actually, this could be a reality for us. We could actually probably do this. So don't limit your thinking to just, oh, it's too expensive. It would never work. Because if she hadn't taken that leap and booked that appointment and said, I just want to see what it might look like for us, she would have limited herself to saying like, no, it's just too expensive. We could never do that. But then the meeting ended with, wow, this is actually a real possibility. So don't limit your thinking in that. There are advisors that you're going to run across that say, it's expensive, don't even bother. Here's the difference. We are specifically trained and we're authorized practitioners of the infinite banking concept. And that is a huge deal. So if you're talking to someone who is not authorized, you know what? It's no fault of their own. They just don't know what they don't know. They haven't had the same training as us.
And authorized by who? I guess we should really mention is the Nelson Nash Institute.
Nelson Nash Institute, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably go on and on, but essentially, I mean, because this page actually does make, I don't know, it just gets us riled up a little bit. So just on so many different levels. And so we'll leave it at that. And I think that it's worth reading, even though we've been talking about it for almost a half an hour here. Read the book. Read the words for yourself.
Yeah, read the book, break it down, read it section by section, read a couple sections a night, let it sink in and really process it. Head over to our website, ranchyourway.com. That's where you can grab the Power Duo. So you're going to get Farming Without the Bank and Becoming Your Own Banker. And trust me, you will want to read both of them. So thank you for listening. We really, really appreciate you. If you could head over to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review, we will see you guys on the other side after you've read your book.
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.